Hi, this is Jen with Unchained Crochet. If you haven't done it yet, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to see more items and tutorials like this. Welcome to the first part of learning to crochet left-handed with Jen. So, when crocheting, as opposed to knitting, you use one needle. We call this a hook because it's got the hook. I like Bates. This is a Bates brand needle. Some of them I've made, my favorite sizes, I've made an ergonomic handle with polymer clay, baked it in the oven for 20 minutes at 265, let it cool for about 5 minutes, and then got to painting with fingernail polish. Base painted with 2 different colors, ombre'd the middle with dry brushing technique, added glitter, let it set up and dry inside the middle of a spool of thread, and you can work on several at one time that way. And then I just add some clear coat after all the glitters. I added probably sometimes 6 to 9 layers of polish. And do not bake that to dry. Once you have your nail polish on it, it will melt it, and you don't want that big mess after you did all that work. So that is a Bates hook as well. I like this hook. Can you see that? It's got a nice catch to it right there, a notch in it, so that it catches your yarn very well. That is an H hook, my favorite size. Today I'm using a J hook. It's a 6mm. Susan Bates. Walmart and Meijer, sorry for that notification if you heard it. Walmart and Meijer no longer sell Bates hooks. You can find them, I believe, still at Joann's and Hobby Lobby, I believe. And probably maybe Michael's as well. I haven't looked at Michael's for them. No matter where they're selling them, I will find them, because these are the best crochet hooks, in my opinion, that are affordable. And they're comfortable to hold. So, one thing I do for myself, I don't know if you have very good eyesight. I am farsighted, so when I look at this, it's hard for me to see. So I take a permanent marker to it, and all that area right there, and I just burnish it with my finger after it dries, and I rub it so that what is left is a shadow of the permanent marker around the J and the numbers, so that I can see and read that very easily. Even with my readers on, I still need that. So, there are several ways to do a slip knot. Before you start chaining, we usually start our crochet with a slip knot. Here's a way my friend taught me to lay the tail over your 2 fingers. Hold it like that. Turn like this, and pull your tail through. Just like that. It's kind of like a tie is tied, and when you pull your tail tighter, you can get it the size you want it. Another way, which is my go-to way because I've just always done it this way, is held it like I'm crocheting, put it around my finger, give the tail a pinch, and leave yourself a good 6 to 8 inches depending on what yarn you're using, because you need to weave that tail in later. You're then going to go behind the first yarn you come to and hook the second yarn. Pull it past that point, give it a twist, hold your triangle you made, pull that loop off of your finger and through the other loop. Just like that, and then give your tail a pull. And for slack, I like to say not too big. You want it the same size as your other chains, but you don't want it so tight that it doesn't move easily on your needle. You don't want it that snug. So you can pull it all the way up there if you want, and then just give it a little pinch to pull it away and give it some slack. Leave a little space there. Now to work your yarn, different people have different methods. Some people hold it like a pin. I have never held it that way. I've been crocheting, not consistently, but since I was, I want to say about 10 and old enough to start doing my fingernails. and polishing my nails. I've always held it like this, held mine at a 45 up to the right. That is your choice. If you want to go this way, that's fine. It's definitely, if you ever do a tutorial, would be prettier because your hand does not get in the way of people seeing your stitches. I just don't, and I can't wrap my hook as easily. I don't know how people do it. It takes a lot of wrist action, and I don't like carpal tunnel, so I prefer to do mine overhanded like this instead of underhanded. So again, play with it. That's your choice, whatever feels comfortable to you. So we start out, we've got our slip knot and our first loop on the hook. When counting your chains, this first loop on your hook does not count. When you get to the end of your chain, if you're doing a certain number of chains for a pattern or a tutorial, that loop that's on your hook never counts. So the one you're starting with, we don't count that. So I'm going to start chaining. I'm going to go ahead and just do a coaster. I did this little one here in a star stitch. It's a very pretty stitch. There's a tutorial for this on my video list. That's a star stitch. That's a little bit more advanced, but a very pretty stitch. This is the same yarn, so I'm just going to make another coaster for my living room or something. Little mug rug. So I'm going to go ahead and do about 20 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So there's 20 chains. Not counting the one on your hook. Learn to count your chains. Don't count the one on your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I look at these loops up at the top. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So now that we've done our chain, that is called a foundation chain. I like to stitch into my back loops. So we're going to start out this first row and do what's called a single crochet. Other than a slip stitch, it is the most simple stitch. So I like to go into the back loops. And when I mean back loops are these little bumps right here along the back. It kind of looks like a spine. These little bumps here. It's a little fidgety doing that your first row, but it gives you a nice chained look finish to the bottom of your piece, to that edge, because it'll make it look just like your last row. Your last row is going to have those stitches like that. Your last row will have stitches at the top that look the same as going through the back loops on the bottom. So back loop method is my method. There are other methods for doing a foundation that I will get into later, but they are more advanced. So I'm going into that back loop, and look, you're not going into this first one because you just came out of that chain. I'm going to go into the next one, and this counts as your first single crochet. You're going in, let me do that slower. You're going into that back loop. You're going to yarn over, we call this yarning over, and pull that yarn through that back loop. Now you have 2 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through both loops on your hook. That is your first single crochet. You'll see that shape out, you know, better once we get some more. So we're going back into the back loop of the next one. Very next one. It's important. Don't skip a stitch unless you're told to do so in a pattern or a tutorial. I've got to get some yarn off this ball. It's misbehaving. My balls have gone wild. Okay. Now I'm going into the next back loop. This is our 3rd stitch. Into the back loop. And sometimes you have to coerce it through that back loop if your chain was a little bit tighter than the other ones, and I am. I'm pushing the tip of my hook through there. Just keep a hold of your hook and keep a hold of your chain. And it helps if you turn it sideways. First turn it on its tummy, so to speak, and go into that spine, that back loop. It's like little vertebrae that run against the back. I find it easier to actually flip it over, look at that vertebrae, that spine, and go through that back loop that way, as opposed to digging down like this. You can do it that way if that's what you want to do. That way works. But I just find it easier to flip it over and go sideways. So I'm going to repeat this again for you. You're going into that back loop with your loop on your hook. Go through the back loop, yarn over, pull through the back loop, then yarn over and pull through 2. Through the back loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Through the back loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Through the back loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Keep going till you reach the last chain that you come to. That was the one that was where you started your slip knot. Okay? So, right here I want to teach you something. If you follow or you want to follow patterns and you've done your big long chains, some patterns call for as high as hundreds. I've seen them as high as like 180 chains, 180 chains. You've done all that counting, okay? And then you have done your first row into your chains. And you're at the end of your first row and you're finding that you don't have enough stitches. What do? Just real quick, you've come to the end of that row and you say, oh, I should have done one more stitch. Go into that chain. This is making a stitch up here. Yarn over and pull through, just like you were going to single crochet, but then yarn over and pull through that loop. See? And yarn over and pull through 2 loops. That gives you another stitch there. And you're good to go. So you're not missing a stitch. And then just go back with whatever stitch you're supposed to be doing. We're still doing our singles. Alright. So that is how you can add another stitch if you find out. And you can keep doing that. And that's a different technique. If you were to keep doing it, that's called a foundation single crochet, which I will teach you in a different video. For now, we're starting with a chain foundation. So you have gone through all your back loops. Now there's no more back loops to go through once you finish your first row here. So we're chaining 1. Since we're single crocheting, we need to chain 1 so that we can go into that same stitch. We've chained 1. And we're single crocheting into, see that V right there? Those 2 loops on top that sit on top. We're going into both of those. Yarn over and pull through both loops. Go through, and you can see where you need to go through right there. Go into with both of those 2 strands on top. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, say you go through just the back loop. You didn't do your front loop too, you just did 1 loop. You can do that intentionally and make yourself a little bit of a lacier garment. It'll have more drape, but you're also going to end up with this line here, this ridge of these front loops, if you were to keep doing that. But you can do that intentionally. And it can actually be a design element. See, I made a line right here. Instead of having a slight holy look right here, it's got that line. And pressed open with some steam, that would open up like that. and have a lot of drape. So that's that. You want to go through, just doing regular single crochet, you usually go through both loops up there. So I'm going to finish this row, and I want you to finish this row right along with me. If you need to pause, go ahead and pause. I'll be here. So this is our second row of our single crochet. Make sure that when you approach your end that you are going into your last stitch. You can also adjust the speed in your settings by tapping, I think it's at the top right of the screen, and hit settings. Tap those three dots, hit settings, and you can adjust your speed to slow the video down if I'm going too fast for you. So always at the end of a single crochet row, if you're doing all single crochet, you would chain one and turn. Our next row though, we're going to do double crochet. So I'm going to chain two and turn. Now remember with the single crochet, when we chained one and turned, we went into that first stitch. With your double crochet, that counts as your first double crochet. So we're not going to go into that very first stitch like we did before. Otherwise you would have a really, let me show you what that looks like. You would have two stitches there basically, and your object would grow out. We don't want to do that. That first two chains, your turning chain is what we call that. Chain two and turn. Don't go into that first stitch, go into the next one. See what I'm doing? Wrap your needle, go into your stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch, yarn over, pull through two loops, yarn over, pull through two loops. Yarn over, just wrap. I usually wrap from behind when I wrap for my doubles and trebles. Go into the stitch, catch your yarn back there, pull through that stitch, yarn over again, pull through two loops, yarn over again, pull through two. See why it's called a double? Because it's double the height of the single crochet. Here's a single crochet row, and here's a double crochet, and you get a little bit more airy look right there. So that's your double. Just keep going across your row there as I am. I'll try to go slow and slow it down for you. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting this is for absolute beginners. I gotta get more yarn off of here, sorry. I have thrown my ball on the floor off the desk before just to get yarn off of it. But when I do that, it gets hung up every time on something on the floor, like a box or something. Edge of the desk, it'll get hung up and catch up, and I won't be able to get my yarn off of it. So this is called your working yarn, by the way. What's coming off of, or your ball yarn. Okay, that's your working yarn. Just keep going across your row. Wrap it, yarn around. They call that a yarn over. But when I'm starting my double crochet, I come from behind and wrap it that way. When I yarn over this way, it's easier for me just to catch it up in the front. I'll let the yarn fall across the front of the hook. You can wrap from any direction. You can wrap this way if that's what you want to do. It really doesn't change the appearance. Okay, so do whatever is comfortable to you. Just make sure you wrap, or that you pull that yarn through. So keep going to the end of your row. We're almost there. We're almost there. Right now you're new, and if this is not perfectly straight, don't worry about it. Okay, I've come to my first single crochet. You see this little bit of a loop there? That was my chain 1 when I did that start of that row. Okay, here is the top of that last single crochet I'm going into. It's right there. You can see it better from the front. So we're not going into this little loop here. That's kind of going to get pulled a little straighter right now. We're going to go into that last single crochet into those 2 loops above your hook, just like before. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So there you have finished your first double crochet row. Do you see the difference between your single crochets? You got an extra little bump here between your single crochet rows. So it kind of makes it look like a beaded look to it. And now we've got a taller row here. So what I want you to do now is go ahead and do 2 more rows of single crochet. I'm going to pause it while I do mine. You do 2 rows. Let me remind you how you do your single crochet. Before you turn or after you turn, do a chain 1 and then single crochet right into that first stitch there. And continue single crocheting, being certain that you get both loops above your hook right here. Keep going all the way across your row. And when you get to the end, you're going to chain 1, turn, and do a single crochet into that stitch you're right above. So I'm going to pause this, and you go ahead and do that second row on your own, okay? When I pause, you pause. Now I've come to the chain 2 where we did our first chain 2 counts as a double crochet. I'm going to go into the top of that chain 2 right there, and I'm going to make sure that I catch up. See, there's 3 strands you could use. I'm going to catch up 2 of them above my hook. So you get a nice chunky bit to hook into. And I'm going to do my single crochet right into the top of that chain 2 that counted as my first double crochet of that row below. So now I'm to my end of my row, chain 1, turn. Be sure you go into that first stitch with your single crochet. If you get slack like that, just pull back on it. First single crochet goes there, single crochet all the way across this row, and your last one is going to be right here, right in there. Okay, so I will meet you at the end of this row. Okay, so you've made it to the end of your row, and do your chain 1, your turning chain. Here is our double crochet row. Here is our, see that bump? We got 2 rows of single crochet right here. So we need to do another chain so that we can do another row. That'll be 2 chains, okay, at the end of that row. That's your turning chain, and that counts as your first double crochet. Since we're doing double crochet on this row, you want to be sure that you don't go into that first one like you did with single crochet. This counts as your first double. Wrap your hook, go into your next stitch, catching both of those 2 top loops. You've got a wrap, and you've pulled one through your previous stitch below. Your yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, go through the stitch, catch your yarn, pull through that stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through, go through 2 and 2 again. Now you may notice that some of your stitches look a little looser than others. You are new to crochet and you're learning to control your tension, and we call that tension. Try to maintain the same tension. If you're uncomfortable holding it tight, don't be so tight, just loosen up. That's why I just let my yarn just ride through my fingers like that. I catch it up like this, hold it above around the front of my finger and down the back. And I just I relax this finger. If you want more tension, you can actually loop it around your pinky and up over your hand like that and control your tension with your pinky. We do that a lot with knitting. I don't knit much anymore, but you can flick it to give yourself some slack, to give yourself more yarn. That's all complicated. I just like to relax when I crochet. I just let it ride up through my fingers. It controls the yarn without being tension. I just use what I call my natural tension. Don't worry about your stitches looking perfect. You are just starting out. See how I went into that last stitch? We're ignoring this side junk right here. That's just your side. That's your beginning chain one of that last single crochet row. So I've done my last double crochet. I'm going to chain one. I'm going to turn, and we're going to do 2 more single crochet rows. I did my last double crochet. Did I say single crochet? So we're going in with a single crochet. We're chaining 1 and turning and going into that first stitch. So finish this row and do your next row just like that. And I will meet you at the end of your next row. Not this one, but the next one. So you will have 2 more rows. We're doing 2 single crochet rows, 1 double crochet row. Okay, so we have our 2 single crochet rows. Now we got a double crochet row to do. 1 double crochet row. So we're going to chain 2. We're going to turn our work. We're going to skip the stitch that we're right above. This counts as our first double crochet. We're going to yarn over. We're going to put through that stitch right there, both loops. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 again. Continue across to the end of your row. So we're really working on, you're learning 2 stitches tonight or today, whatever it is when you watch this. At this time you're learning 2 different stitches besides the chain stitch. You're building your skill set. You're learning to make sure you don't leave out any stitches. Stop every once in a while and look at your edges. Sometimes you might forget that last stitch. See, my edge looks a little sloppy right there. Once you block that with a steam iron or wet it and pin it out on like those foam kids play mats, people use that a lot, and they'll use T-pins. I like to steam press my acrylic. It helps with the drape. Sometimes if it's a piece that doesn't need any drape, I'll just finish it up and throw it into the wash. It'll work itself out, but you can see that I've not skipped stitches, and we have a pretty good rectangle here. Okay, nice and even. If you see that your piece is going like this on one side, really bad, you're skipping stitches, or you're not going into your last stitch from the previous row. So make sure you're not skipping stitches, okay? And it can be a little hard to identify that when you first start doing it. When you start skipping one at the end or skipping one at the beginning, it'll be real gradual. You'll start getting a little hourglass shape to it. That we don't want shaping if we're making a square, okay? We will learn some shaping later on in further tutorials, but right now I want you to make sure your piece is straight. Okay, just fluff it out, give it a little stretch, and see if it's straight. You can count your stitches if you want to. I don't worry about it with this. This is just a little square we're making. We're making a mug rug or a coaster, whatever you want to call it. So now we finished our double crochet row. We went into the last single crochet. We're going to chain one, and we're going to go into that first stitch with our first single crochet. Keep going and do 2 rows of that. Okay? Chain one and single crochet 2 rows. Okay, so we've got our last 2 rows of single crochet we've done. You see that bump? That's between the 2 rows of single crochet. That's how you know you've got your 2 rows. If you forget that you've done one and you think you only done 1 row, look for that bump. If you got that bump there, you've got your 2 rows of singles. Okay? Chain 2, turn, go into not that first stitch but your next stitch to double crochet. Continue across that row. I'm going to pause here and you can pause as well. Now we're ready for our chain 1 and do 2 single crochet rows again. And you can keep going with this piece. If you've gotten this far and you say, hey, I don't want a coaster, I want to make a scarf, just keep doing your pattern. Keep doing your pattern and make it as long as you want. Make it a scarf. It's wide enough. It's probably about 6 inches wide. You could always add a border to it too if you want to make it a little wider so you get the length you want. Go back down the sides, along the sides, and go around your stitches on the sides and just make sure they're evenly spaced, and you can make a little contrast border for your scarf if that's what you want to do. It does not have to be a coaster or a mug rug. I just am in need of coasters and mug rugs and don't mind having them. I need one for my bedroom. I got one for my desk already. This one will be for the living room, I think. And I like this minty teal that I'm using. This is, by the way, this is worsted weight. And it is Hobby Lobby. I love this yarn. It is acrylic. And I don't have the ball band right now, but with worsted weight yarns, it'll have a little picture of a skein. Any kind of yarn, it usually has a picture of a skein. And I don't know if you can see that right there. There's a number 3 right there on this other ball band I have. This is a different yarn. This one was a 3 weight. There's a 3 right there. So if you're wanting a heavier weight for a scarf or a shawl or sweater, whatever, you would look for a 4 weight. That's what we call worsted. This one here is more of a sport weight or DK weight, double knit weight. I like sport. This one calls for an H hook. It's a 3. It's a lighter weight. That was this yarn from a different project. So this yarn here is a 4 weight. And I usually go anywhere. I look at the yarn to see, yes, that's a real 4 weight. Because some of them will say they're 4s and they're really a lighter weight or heavier or bulkier. This one's a good even 4 for me. I think that's an average size 4 yarn. So I usually use anywhere from an I to a J or K hook, depending on how much drape I want or how much bulk I want. It's all up to you. The smaller the needle, the earlier in the alphabet it comes. So this is a bigger one. It's a J. They have some big honking needles, hooks you can go get for really bulky yarn. If you're using a finer yarn, the finer the yarn, the smaller your hook should be. And they go really itty bitty depending on your thread. Some people use thread crochet. I'm not a thread crochet person. Even lace weights, I will double those lace weight yarns and use a bigger hook with those. So we're back to our single crochet here. Just don't forget to go into the top of your turning chain there from your previous double crochet row. Always go into the top of your turning chain unless you're shaping and they tell you to skip it. Make sure you hit that on your way back. I'm going to chain one. I'm going to do my second row here. I came back sooner than I planned, I think, but you get the point. Just keep going with your 2 rows of single crochet, alternated with 1 row of double. This would be really pretty in a self-striping yarn or a variegated yarn. Variegated yarns have a shorter run of color changes, so it would be really cute with this alternating pattern of singles and doubles. So let's pretend that you've got your piece as long or as big as you want it and you're ready to be done. So I like to try to finish my pieces with a mirror image if it's something small like this. So I started with 2 rows of single crochet here, and I'm ending with 2 rows of single crochet there. So see and check, if you want a square, you can fold it corner to corner and see that that is probably, because I'm not going to do another row of double crochet, I'm due for a row of double crochet next. This is as square as I'm getting right here. So just do corner to corner, and you can see that you're close enough to the shape of a square. It's not real obviously rectangular. And you can wet this, you can block it out with pins on an ironing board, or you can steam press it with an iron. Just be sure you're new to crochet. Be sure you don't burn yourself. Be safe. Make sure you have water in your steam iron. It's a regular clothes iron. Make sure that you don't add water with it plugged in. And when you hit that, I usually give it an extra puff of steam. If you want drape, go ahead and steam it. I'm just going to leave mine like this. And textured stitches like this other little one I did the other day. Unless I was going to wear this, I would not steam it. If I was going to wear it and I wanted it to have some drape and blow that design open a little bit, I would go ahead and steam it. Say my yarn was heavier than I really wanted it, I would just go ahead and pull it out and steam it. Steaming acrylic can be done. Do not use a dry iron. You will murder your yarn and melt it, and it will stick to your iron. So make sure you add your water and steam it safely. We don't want to murder any yarn. We just want to kill it kindly so it tames it and makes it have that drape you want or shape you want. If your shape's a little off, you don't have to start all over. Just pull it out a little bit and steam it. It'll be all right. Okay, but keep working on, we're not looking for perfection here, but keep working on making sure you hit every stitch, okay, that you're supposed to hit. Rewatch the video, make another one, or keep going and make yourself a scarf. Just keep practicing and don't give up. Whatever you do, don't give up. So just pretend you are done with your project if you're not done with it, or you can finish it now. Take an extra chain right here, like you were going to turn and go back and do a single crochet. Pull that loop up. Leave yourself about 6 to 8 inches. All right. Then you're going to use your scissors or your snips and cut that loop. Pull out the ball yarn. Make sure you're pulling your ball yarn out and not the other way around. Then give it a little pinch, little tug right there, and you'll have a little bit of a knot. But then you can take that tail And you want to have some yarn needles. Yarn needles are good to have. Let me grab a yarn needle. I'm going to pause this. This is a yarn needle. You want to get these while you're getting your yarn and your hook. It has a pretty good large eye. I like the metal ones. There are different styles out there. You can play with different styles if you like, but it'll be labeled a yarn needle. It has a blunt end to it, so you can't poke yourself too badly with it. And it's not going to snag your yarn and split it up as badly. Okay? We don't want to pull up little tiny loops in our yarn like that and make it ugly. Okay? So what I'm going to teach you now is how to bury your tail. I usually, with a 4-weight, you can do it like this and smush it between your fingers and your fingernail if you have nails. And go to the edge there and just wiggle that back and forth, kind of seesaw action. And get most of those through there and give them a little pull. Just like that. Or you can fold it in half, really mash it down, and do the same. And pull it up by that little loop there. Either way. This yarn, or this needle here, is not going to work good for a bulky yarn. I've never gotten a bulky yarn through there without a bunch of fuss and muss. So you're better off getting like a bigger eye plastic needle for that. So you've got that little knot there. Don't worry about that knot showing. And with single crochet, this last row here with single crochet, I like to just go in there, kind of let it ride between the stitch so you can't see your needle much at all on either side while it's in there. So just hold it evenly between your fingers. Don't mush down too much. Hold it between your fingers and just slide it right through 6 or 7 stitches. If you split a little bit of yarn here or there, it's not a big deal. You just don't want a bunch of needle poking out. If it's poking out a whole lot over a stitch or two, you're going to see that tail yarn riding above your stitches on the outside of your piece. So this buries it nicely and really isn't too much trouble. The needle's nice and strong and straight. So just keep pulling a little bit. Don't want to pull too hard and pull that off your needle. And then I usually give that corner a tug to loosen up the tension of the yarn that we just buried. Then turn and go back. But when you go back, see right here? Go over one of those loops that you just came under, so it catches it a bit. If you're working with a slippery yarn, go under a loop, wrap your needle a couple times, and pull through those loops to make a little knot right there, and then bury the rest of your tail if you're working with a slippery yarn. That helps to secure your tail. But I'm just going to go over this loop right here, and I'm going to bury the yarn again, just the same direction I came from. Opposite direction, sorry. And I'm going to come out the other side and look and see. You don't have a bunch of needles showing there. You just rode right through that single crochet row. And you will get right there. My tail's getting short, and the end of my tail is back here. If you pull that real hard, it will come through, but it's going to bunch your row up. Okay? What I would do is secure your row with your thumb and your finger and wiggle it on through. If it won't do that, then find the end by pulling each side of your loop up here by your needle. And I found the end, and I'm just going to pull it through. If it tightens up on you, just stretch it back out and let it release. And I usually cut it where it's not real short up against there. You may launder it, use it, whatever, and it go through the wash, and you don't have any tail left buried because you've pulled it too tight. You can always pull it loose again and trim it up. I'm happy with that. Now, back to our chain foundation where we went through the back loops, remember? This is the beauty of going through your back loops for your first row of stitches into your chain. You got that nice, see, it looks the same. The top and the bottom look the same. Those are very easy. Like if I wanted to sew those together, I could, and I can show you how to do a hidden stitch just by picking between those V's right there and going from one to the other. You could sew that up into a tube if you wanted to. Or if you have two squares you want to join, you got nice V's. You can pick up and invisibly make a seam right there between two squares. So that is why I choose to do the back loop method for my first rows. So we're going to go and do the same thing with this one. Thread your needle with your tail. See how much tail I got? I got about 6 to 8 inches. Always, that's my minimum, is a 6-inch tail. I try to make that my minimum. And just ride in through those. See, my needle started to pop out. I'm backing out a little bit. I'm just going to ride in between that row. Little bit of needle showing there. That row might have been a little bit looser, but I don't have any big pops of needle coming through. Pull it through. I usually, if I got a solid row of stitches, I usually try to go through at least the length of a needle. At least the length of the needle. Push it through. Make sure your tail comes out. Now see there, I've pulled that edge too much. Before I go back on it, I'm going to give it a tug. We don't want it to be drawn up like a drawstring. Now, go back, go over that last loop you went under. Right here, I'm going to go over that and just back through. Kind of like tunneling through. And come out my end. And I'm going to have to pull it tighter so I can get my loop out. Get my tail to come all the way through. Now I'm going to pull it loose. I'm going to pull it really loose. And cut my tail short. Now, you could block this if you wanted to. But you don't have to. And there is your first piece. Your 2 single crochet rows, your double crochet row, 2 single, see the bumps? Double crochet, there's a little bit more space between your double crochets because they're taller. 2 single, a double, 2 single, a double, 2 single. And you got yourself a nice little square you can put your coffee cup on. These make great little Christmas gifts. Stuff some stocking stuffers. Make it out of cotton. I love this cotton at Hobby Lobby. I've not used it. My daughter has. And everybody I know rants and raves about I love this cotton yarn at Hobby Lobby. I do plan to try that out. I'm not a little project person per se, but when it comes to making gifts and you want to whip them out, that would be the thing to do. You can make yourself some little washcloths. Learn to make them in the round. I can teach you how to do that as well. Make yourself some face scrubbies. You know, it's all up to you and the shapes that you make. You can use them for what you want. But again, you have done it and you can feel proud of yourself. Congratulations on learning to crochet. And I hope that I can help you in the future. If I'm not your teaching style, by all means, find someone who you jive with. We don't all jive with the same teachers and same students. I want you to learn and to grow, whoever you are, wherever you are. Thanks, and you have a blessed day or night.